subsequently, happening in another time period in the distant future of the 30th century. Cory Englehart, who is an estranged zesty 12-year-old from a multiverse, who enjoys gaming, playing guitar, weightlifting, PE, horseback riding, and listening to music. He is zest and humor, but can also be very sneaky and a bit mischievous at times. He is a Christian. He is currently at school. Physically, Cory is in good shape. He is short but has a big heart for his age, with pale skin, blonde hair and blue eyes. He lives in a middle-class neighborhood in San Francisco. His mother is a deity and father is a chthonic being who is not really involved in her life, even though he lives under the same roof as him. Her mother's name is Tammy, who is a school teacher, and father is named Jason, who is special agent. Cory goes to Cinematic Middle School in San Francisco, where his favorite subjects are PE and music. He loves his teacher Dr. Grumman but hates Mrs. Swisher, whose interests include speaking in a really annoying voice. Cory's best friend is a kid named Brinks. They get along good most of the time. He also hangs around with Joseph and Jeff. They enjoy watching movies together. Moreover, a bit about Cory's backstory is an act of kindness shown by a tragic warrior through a movie character by his favorite musician inspired him to try to act likewise, but seeing a parent treated cruelly by authority figures left him distrustful of similar people and seeking revenge. Consequently, Cory's career choice was influenced by the admiration of this fortunate musician. One day in this futuristic multiverse, during the 3016, when the 4-Star Theater is located on Clement Street, an iconic location for the film industry that has been part of San Francisco's diverse movie culture for many generations, particularly known for also showing Asian and art films, that's right smack in the inner Richmond neighborhood that has been foreclosed. Cory had just come from an after-school STEM Explorers program at a CIA division of Area 51, and had this fervent disciple of watching movies and playing video games, so he decided to go straight to the 4-Star Cinematheque to catch a flick that he had seen for 20th time. Following the movie, he finds himself staying after to play some video games in the arcade room. One day he discovered a portal hidden in a video game and blipped him while playing the video game back to the past, jumping him through a time warp into a 1950s version of the 4-Star movie theater. Because of that, he wandered into the basement, but little did he know, there was a presence of a supreme being in the atmosphere with another plan in mind for the path that he was on in life that would change his life forever. Because of that, the presence of this supreme being descended on him to give him superpowers of strength that came with supernatural abilities to jump into any movie scene for inner guidance that also included divine intuitive intercessory prayer. Could Cory's day get any better than this? Oh, but it has. Since then he has been able to jump in and out of this time period. Until finally, after Cory arrived in the year of 1954 one day seated in one particular movie showing at the old 4-Star movie theater, he gets an insight to jump into this old film and accordingly jumped in a scene with the younger version of his favorite musician for wisdom and knowledge on how to deal with something he was going through at the time. Upon flicking back to reality in 1954, he has a run-in with celluloid just as the superhero is returning from a film jump of his own and meets Joel FLIXSTER as he is coming out of his superhero's skin, who took Cory under his wings as his cinematic protege and sidekick, along with Reels and Diamondiferous, not to mention, celluloid even nicknamed Cory, FLIXSTER. And so, every day Cory made it a regular appointment to time travel and jumps into the time period of 1954 to see Joel FLIXSTER and be movie mentored by him with Ayrton and Skylar, as he jumps into an old movie before returning back to his 30th century multiverse. At the end of the day, after rebounding back to the future of the 30th century, Cory discovered that there's power in his name, being that FLIXSTER refers to the source of his power, so in his excitement he had a restless night, staying up all night to make a superhero costume that looked like a futuristic retro combat stylish athletic suit outfit designed in vivid yellow, black and vivid blue. It also includes an acoustic guitar disguised as a blaster, neutralizer, an electro-biomechanical neural transmitting zero synapse repositioner that is a top-secret device. It has the ability to wipe the mind of anybody who sees the flash as its eureka phaser generates a creativity beam. The hit person gets an aha moment. Used on stuck collaborators or yourself. A hood built into the suit, a global positioning device in the belt, and a pair of gauntlets. His emblem displayed on his shoulders and belt. It also includes a bandana. It stretches to accommodate anyone who wishes to wear it. It also includes a mask, and inertial dampers. Not to mention, Cory's powers that are generated from his name, in which his powers were inherited by a deity and include either enhancing or draining life energy and creating copies of himself through movie characters. He also has been given super memory and immunity to most types of radiation. He received these superpowers when the procedure involving a mutant film badge worked better than expected, thus exposed to a strange chemical found in it while studying an alien planet after it had crash-landed on Earth. Cory's mum is a deity and his dad is a chthonic being, and his flaws and weaknesses are short-sighted, impulsive, and possessive of characters. The next day, Cory traveled back to the 1950s. He was ecstatic to share his suit and tell what he had discovered to the gang subsequent to being recruited as FLIXSTER to join Celluloid, Reels and Diamondiferous in their work with the law enforcement to assist them on arduous unsolved cases together. Accordingly, they fought crime, when not being mentored of movie jumping, thereafter. And so, the Flix texting stories of 4 movie journeys begins. The following morning, as Joel was opening the movie theater, starting projectors and opens shutters to project images onto screens, he received this intuition to throw up an orison for the one person who attempts suicide every 38 seconds to be saved and changed into celluloid to make intervention for them. All the while, Eaton would be off in the cinematic alternative school, then looking out for the little people in the real world as Reels. Skylar would be scoping out the popular 1950s movies that were in showing at the 4-star theater and Flix jumping into them as Diamondiferous. All the while, Cory would be playing pinball in the olden day game room. When Joel returned, he would be coordinating equipment operation with presentation of supplemental material, such as music, oral commentaries, and then sound effects. Until he gets an intuition to save suicidal and springs up into celluloid. While at the same moment in the cinematic school, Diamondiferous was off in her movie class in cinematic alternative school. Eaton kicking butt and taking name in standing up for the little people in the world. As Cory would be playing pinball in the olden day game room until the next movie showing to see the 1950s movie, The Tingler, 1959, and jumping into it accordingly as FLIXSTER. Moving on to fulfill his next duty after being back, Joel operates special effects equipment, such as stereopticons, to project pictures onto screens. Until an intuition interrupts and he springs up into celluloid to save another from suicide. While at the same moment in the cinematic school, Reels was off in his movie class in cinematic alternative school while Skylar was kicking butt and taking names in standing up for the little people in the world subsequent to Cory playing pinball in the olden day game room until the next movie showing in another theater that would be showing the 1950s movie, Blackboard Jungle, 1955, and jumping into it accordingly as FLIXSTER. When celluloid flicks back into the 4-star theater as Joel is next duty of preparing film inspection reports, attendance sheets, and logbooks. Simultaneously, until an intuition interrupts for him to spring up into celluloid and save another person from suicide. While at the same moment in the cinematic school, Diamondiferous was off in her movie class in cinematic alternative school while Eaton would be kicking butt and taking names in standing up for the little people in the world subsequent to Cory being in the olden day arcade room, playing video games until another movie would show, then he would be off into another theater to see the 1950s movie, Curse of Frankenstein, 1957, and jumping into it accordingly as FLIXSTER. When Joel FLIXSTER is done with his last task, after jumping out of celluloid's skin of course and into his own skin, he would be found setting up and inspect curtain and screen controls. Until another intuition calls and he springs up into celluloid again to save another suicidal. While at the same moment in the cinematic school, Reels was off in his movie class in cinematic alternative school while Skylar would be kicking butt and taking names in standing up for the little people in the world. Simultaneously, Cory would be in the olden day arcade room, playing video games until another movie would show. Then he would be off into another theater to see the 1950s movie, Picnic, 1956, and jumping into it accordingly as FLIXSTER. Joel arranges schedules for theater facilities upon return as at the same time movie quotes are flooding the thoughts diamondiferous while in her movie class at her cinematics school. Whereas, Ethan would be kicking butt and taking names and standing up for the little people in the world. Upon Joel's return from his heroic suicidal mission and just when he thinks he can rest from the intuitions and saving suicidals, he gets another one in a flash that causes him to spring up into celluloid to make intervention again. While at that same moment, Cory would be in the olden day arcade room, playing video games until another movie would show. Then it's off to another theater to see the 1950s movie, Horror of Dracula, 1958, and jumping into it accordingly as FLIXSTER. When Joel returns, he hangs up his celluloid suit and fulfills the task of removing film splicing in order to prepare films for shipment after showings, and return films to their sources. After that Joel clocks out to take a lunch as Reels would be flicking back into reality to join him and Skylar, as Cory would meet up with them in the employees' quarters, where they all would sit down together and talk with food in their mouth over a lunchbox and juice box. Joel returned to work 30 minutes after Eton Cinematic School shortly. Skylar would go off to watching movie, and Cory would venture into the arcade room to play video games. On the clock again, Joel utilizes the equipment required to rewind films and operates special effects equipment. He proceeds to close the facilities according to rules and schedules. Upon closing the theater, Joel would hang around the projectionist booth for Eton, Skylar and Cory to finish doing their daily activities. After they would all say goodnight to each other before departing their own separate ways once again. Thus, Skylar and Cory time-traveled back to their future while Eton went to his broom closet in the 4-star theater. However, while Joel wheels himself home in his wheelchair, he has another run-in with an FBI most wanted fugitive, Jason Derek Brown, whose last name has been changed from Englehart, who is wanted for unlawful flight to avoid prosecution after committing first-degree murder and armed robbery. The FBI is offering a reward of up to $200,000 for information leading directly to the arrest of Jason Derek Brown. Joel pulls out his cell phone and jumps Jason Derek Brown and himself into The Equalizer, 2014, movie from the future that's about a man of mysterious origin who believes he has put the past behind him, dedicates himself to creating a quiet new life. However, when he meets a teenager who has been manhandled by violent Russian mobsters, he simply cannot walk away. With his set of formidable skills, he comes out of self-imposed retirement and emerges as an avenging angel, ready to take down anyone who brutalizes the helpless. Subsequently, the scene that they have jumped into rewrites the perp's story. But will it cause a heart change that'll lead to a surrender? The next day, as Joel is opening the movie theater and starting everything up, Eton runs up to him with an Glitches Gazette newspaper, blurting out the headline, saying, "Fugitive Takedown." Joel takes the newspaper from Eton's hands to find that a character in the Equalizer movie has probably caused a blip for Jason Derek Brown to be taken down by the FBI. Joel sat pondering over the perplexity, saying, "If I wasn't the character, then were you?" Eton looks at Joel, shaking his head as he says, "It wasn't me. I went straight to bed." Just then, Skylar comes flashing in from her time warp. Joel asks her, after you jumped out of this multiverse, where did you go? Watched a home movie, then jumped into it. Skylar answered. It wouldn't have happened to be the equalizer? Joel asked. Yeah, why? Skylar responded. Joel holds up the newspaper to show Skylar the headline. She gawks at it. Joel asks, what? Skylar responds, he is suddenly blipped in my time to being media mogul. So I take it you didn't do it? Joel said. No. Skylar responded. Then, who? Joel asked. Promptly, there's a flash of light that emits from the entrance of the restroom and Cory walks out, wiping his hands on a paper towel with a newspaper under his arm. He tossed the paper towel in a nearby trash can as he approaches Joel, Ethan and Skylar with the newspaper from the future that he removes from under his arm and holds up in front of their face. It was me. Cory blurted. The headline reads, Father gets square with son after years of giving him the slip. Joel, Skylar and Ethan see that it looks like the same FBI's most wanted fugitive on the front cover of their 1950s 20th century newspaper, but he's looking like a new man as whatever has happened in the movie has changed a lineage of men in his bloodline to make a new person out of Jason Derrick Brown. I changed him. Joel blurted. My dad was never in my life at all, until one day I got curious to know who my dad was, and when I found out by gaining unauthorized access to files in a government system, I discovered the apple doesn't fall far from the tree in my family for being in trouble with the law, as the men in my family were on the FBI's most wanted fugitive list and led me to him. I wanted the buck to stop with me. Cory responded. Joel peers at the newspaper from the 1950s and sighs to Cory's words. You do know what you've done, right? Joel asked. Cory just dismissively shrugged with a smirk. I stopped the generational curse before it carried on to me. Cory said. You teens always be wanting to change things, but you don't want to change yourself. You can't be messing with time like that. Of course, you was a part of helping to rewrite his story, but that's the wrong way to make someone into a new person. I told Skylar this, and now I'm telling you, you can't change who someone was without changing their past and dramatically affecting their future. You still have a lot to learn, kiddo. Joel hesitated, unsure of what to say. It's all good. I should have told you what to do and what not to do when you time travel. Ethan then turns away, whistling. Joel returns to work. Skylar goes off into a theater to watch a film, while Cory shrugs his shoulders, and goes off into the arcade room to play pinball. The end. At least. For now.